Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar, Choosing the Right Network for Your Mine. My name is John Williams and I'm an editorial assistant for Global Mining Review magazine. I'll be the moderator today. Our speakers today are Todd Rigby, Director for Sales at Rajant, and Sagar Chandra, Vice President for the Americas at Rajant. The idea of this webinar came as a result of customer questions. Mines are as different as people. Large established mines will often have much more sophistication in their processes for reviewing and conducting due diligence on major purchases. Smaller or newer mines, however, may be less so. Regardless of which camp you're in, the importance of making the right decision can have significant effects on the efficiency and profitability of your mine for years to come. It is our hope that we can share a wealth of knowledge with the audience on what some of the most sophisticated operators are considering, and some of the most probing questions and issues that they are concerned about and making inquiries about. I'll first introduce our speakers, and then I'll come to ask some general questions. We'll let them alternate sharing answers about each question, and our objective will be to share the highlights of Todd and Sagar's many years working in this field, with stories and anecdotes from their experiences. As you listen, if you think of questions, please do feel free to type them into the question bar on the right-hand side of your screen, and send them to us throughout the program. At the end, we will spend whatever time we have remaining answering as many questions as we can get to. All questions will be available via Rajant's website, whether we answer them during the webinar or not. If you would like a particular speaker to answer your question, please do specify this. Otherwise, we will have Todd and Sagar answering alternately. So our first speaker is Todd Rigby. He is the Director of Sales and has been with Rajant for the last 8 years. For over 20 years, Todd has been involved with integrating technology in mines and construction sites. Todd has helped to establish Rajant's dealer network throughout the US, Canada, South America, Australia, and Africa. Prior to his employment at Rajant, he was Rajant's first reseller. Having worked as both a reseller and a manufacturer has helped him gain unique opportunities to visit mines around the globe and see firsthand what works and what does not in the application of technology. This unique perspective allows him to share these experiences with mining operators to help them improve operational efficiencies and return on investment. Our next speaker is Sagar Chandra. He's the Vice President of the Americas for Rajant. Sagar has more than 16 years' experience in providing fleet management and wireless network solutions to global mining customers. In the past 6 years at Rajant, his focus has been to work with integrators and partners, deploying real-time communications for various mining operations in Central and South America. So, what are the top performance questions your most sophisticated customers ask about? Todd, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, John. About 18 to 24 months ago, some of our larger customers began asking if our network would support autonomy. Since then, this question has become more common. The irony is, as a percentage of total mines, very few mine sites are using autonomy today, but it is still a valuable question to ask as autonomous drills, dozers, shovels, and trucks are rapidly making their way onto customer sites around the world. In order to support autonomy, networks must have high, consistent data rates, low latency, and low packet loss. Go ahead, Sagar.
Thanks, Todd. So yes, definitely. I think autonomous and remote controlled solutions have been gaining a lot of interest. But of course, there's always the standard question. Can the network support all of the traditional mine management solutions? So we're talking fleet management, high precision, vital signs monitoring. And in the past few years, more and more customers ask for fatigue monitoring and collision avoidance. So this is not news to anybody who's joined us for this webinar, but a requirement tied to this that we have all heard is the mining customer wants a single network that can support multiple applications from different providers. I have one more point to add, but let me pass it back to Todd first.
Network architecture is important because it affects latency, throughput, deployment time and complexity, and even ongoing operational costs. When you drill down into this category, our sophisticated customers are asking questions like, is the network architecture single layer or multi-layer? Is the network layer 2 or layer 3? Do routes or handoffs have to be configured manually, or does the network auto-configure routes? How is the network managed? Follow-on questions to this include, are the management tools freeware or custom software? And does the software run locally or is it hosted in the cloud? Additionally, we get asked, does the network support 802.11 Wi-Fi connections? Do the network nodes use omni or directional antennas? What is the expected packet loss? And what is the latency per hop? Without sounding like a salesman, let me give you an idea for the most favorable answers so you can be a better judge of the answers you get when you're interviewing different solution providers. A flat or single layer network is easier to manage than a multi-layer network. Layer 2 has both performance and interoperability advantages over layer 3. If your network requires manual route configuration, this can triple or even quadruple your deployment configuration time and exponentially increase your ongoing management costs over the life of the network. Routing errors caused by human error are a huge contributor to network reliability issues. As a rule, mining customers prefer proprietary or custom software versus freeware management type tools. Custom software tends to be more sophisticated and easier to use. Mines also universally prefer local hosting of management software as opposed to cloud-based solutions for both access security and operational risk reasons. In today's mine, it is common to have many Wi-Fi client devices scattered throughout the mine, so it is important to have a network that can support these Wi-Fi connections. Omnidirectional antennas dramatically simplify network deployment complexity and reduce deployment time and cost. This is compounded over the life of the network since infrastructure will be relocated as mine plans progress or even temporarily moved to protect network infrastructure from blasts. The most sophisticated mines are looking for networks with less than 5% packet loss and no more than a half a millisecond of latency per hop.
So that's a good point on packet loss and latency. Obviously, these are part of the performance metrics that are always important, along with bandwidth. And this is where scalability, availability, and throughput become important questions. So sending data from a moving truck in a mine is one thing, but mines today are asking for more. How about sending data and video? What impact will this have and adding new applications have on the bandwidth? Will the network continue to have the same throughput and availability? So all mining operations obviously want a network that will not slow down, will not lose bandwidth when they add 5, 10, 20, 50 new radio nodes, and on top of that, start sending video from 3 or 4 cameras. All this with the question of, can the mine maintain strong performance without adding more solar trailers or adding a new LTE tower? Now, I bring this up because I was asked about this specifically last November. So I had an event with a number of customers, and one of the customers said, look, my pit is getting a little bit deeper, as mining operations tend to do, and I have problems already of low availability and throughput. And to solve it, I have to add a new LTE tower at about $400,000 US. So of course, this is not scalability. And the questions that a mine needs to ask and verify early in the process is critical to ensure we have a network that allows a plug-and-play setup. Or put it better, power on and move on. Power on the new devices that you can add, new technology, and you move on to doing your job. Not spend time looking for approval on a new tower.
So when it comes to network performance and specific metrics or features, what specific questions should customers be asking about? Sagar, why don't you start us off with this one?
Sure. Anyone who has responded to an RFI or RFP know the basic metrics, throughput, latency, et cetera. But I wanted to share with you some questions that go beyond these obvious metrics. For example, reliability and uptime. Of course, a mine will ask for high availability from the network. For example, 95% or 99% availability means that the radio just stays powered on or is actually powered on and doing what it's supposed to do, which is routing data and not losing any data and video. Of course, the latter. So it's good for a customer to be specific so that when someone gives you an answer like, oh, we'll deliver 99.9999%, you can evaluate the truth in this and see if it matches what you asked for. Some good questions I've heard are, what is the hardware failure rate? Is it less than 1%? Is it less than 3%? Any other answer should raise a flag about the hardware and the quality that's designed for use in mining. I know Todd has a couple of points he'll share later on this, but let me just continue with one more. Another good question is to understand how the network reacts when there is interference or when the fleet loses connection with the main tower or a solar trailer. We all know every operation will experience some type of interference, abnormal event. You want to know that your truck or shovel will not lose connection with the central office where all the mine management software is. Fortunately, technology is well accepted in mining operations globally, so let's make sure that the foundation is reliable and strong to let you receive this data in real time. Todd, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Sagar. With regard to environmental requirements, customers want to know, what is the ingress protection or IP rating? What is the enclosure made of? And will the enclosure withstand the extreme shock and vibration found in a mining environment? You should accept nothing less than IP67 for any outdoor networking equipment. However, this should not be the only determining factor as to whether a manufacturer's equipment will hold up in a mine. Plastic enclosures will not stand up to the harsh conditions and abuse equipment receives in a mine. Even lightweight metal enclosures will not provide sufficient protection. The reason informed and experienced buyers are asking about shock and vibration is because mining equipment has both in spades. Several years ago, we conducted shock and vibration testing on the handrail of several 240-ton haul trucks. We consistently had readings of 5+ Gs of force. This may seem like a lot, but an even more extreme application is mounting network gear on a D10 or D11 class dozer using a ripper in a hard rock mine. The reality is, if you want your network to survive in a mine for several years, you need to ensure the electronic equipment is designed with specific enclosures that can protect against extreme temperatures, both cold and hot, water and dust ingress, and almost unimaginable shock and vibration. In addition to the network nodes, your antennas and power supplies need to be just as well made. It is not at all unreasonable for you to ask your vendor to let you inspect the equipment they intend to install. We have seen countless failed deployments where a previous integrator used residential or commercial type equipment that was literally shaken to pieces in 1 to 3 days. Lastly, don't be fooled by a vendor telling you that they have ensured environmental protection because they've potted their electronics. This is a fancy term for filling the enclosure with epoxy to seal the electronics from water and dust. There are negatives to this strategy. First, any specific component failure inside the device will mean you have to replace the entire device. Since you can't peel away the epoxy, repairs are impossible. Second, the life of the equipment will likely be shortened as a result of trapping heat. An important strategy of building an electronic device for longevity is creating a way for it to dissipate heat. Potting traps heat, which result in higher internal temperatures, which in turn reduce the life of the electronic components. Another important consideration, and one that only the most experienced customers consider, is what are the manpower requirements for operating the network? The implication is the more reliable the network, the less manpower would be required to maintain it. While this is technically true, it is my opinion you will spend far more in manpower managing the changing coverage requirements in a mine than just keeping the network up and running. I'd like to share some questions you can ask that will help you have an indication of the manpower required. First, do the infrastructure sites have an antenna array that must be oriented in a specific direction or azimuth? If the answer is yes, this would indicate a requirement for manually configuring routes and handoffs. This type of network makes relocating an infrastructure site exponentially more difficult since you must create 2 new routing tables every time you want to move an infrastructure site. These routing tables are complex, and they take skilled and well-paid personnel to ensure no mistakes are made, because any error will result in dropped connections and lost data. The first routing table will need to be installed when you power off this solar site and are removing it. And then the second routing table must be installed when you power the solar site back on in its new location. Another question you should ask is how many directional antennas per infrastructure site? Each directional antenna will require an alignment at each end. If most or all solar sites have 1 or more directional antennas, that means you must have a second field engineer involved when moving a single solar site. Having a few directional antennas isn't a death knell, but having a high number of directional antennas will be unnecessarily costly over the life of the network. The best answer to both of these questions would be there are no antenna arrays that require alignment, and there are only a few directional antennas. If all the solar sites primarily use omnidirectional antennas, you can rest assured a single person without a lot of training can relocate a solar site in a short amount of time. This will always be the lowest manpower required solution. Have you got another question for us, Sagar?
Yes, I do. This time a simple yes/no type of a question. So customers often ask and need to ask, is a central controller needed? I include this question under the reliability slide because if a network does require a controller, or it's called a root node or a master control node, whatever you call it, that is a potential single point of failure. And having a single point of failure will not help the overall reliability of the network. On the other hand, not having a controller means you have a more efficient network, a faster network. And this, of course, helps with all the fundamental metrics we just talked about, throughput, latency, etc.
So we all know the saying, you get what you pay for. Many people are willing to pay more if the value exists. Customers certainly want to understand all the value angles. So what are the right questions that they should be considering, that they should be asking regarding cost? Todd, I think it's your turn to start.
The first question I want to share is a question we are rarely asked about, but one that has the most variability between all the network options on the market. And that is, what are the expected operational expenses associated with the network? The right answer is obviously cheaper is better, but I will offer fair warning. This is likely going to be one of the most difficult questions for you to compare the answers to. If I were shopping, I would ask every vendor to estimate the operational cost of their own solution as compared to all of their competitors, and why. If you ask 3 to 5 different vendors, you may have a couple answers that seem like outliers, but you are likely to find a grouping of answers that will give you an idea of where the truth lies. Additionally, if you can find a consultant who has experience working with multiple manufacturers' equipment, they can also give you insight into this. And lastly, on rare occasions, I've also seen mines hire an integrator who sells multiple competing technologies to act as an advisor on this issue. In most cases, the consulting integrator is paid like a consultant and omitted from the tender process. At the end of this process, if the anticipated OpEx is greater than 20% of your purchase price, this should be a huge red flag. What's your next suggested question, Sagar?
So the OpEx question is an important one. Just as a quick side story, I had a customer in Brazil tell me they don't have the budget. They have a fleet of about 70 or 75 units total. They didn't have the budget to spend almost $280,000 annually. That's $280,000 US just for maintenance of their firmware and service for LTE components. So I can imagine a lot of mining operations feel the same way. Good news, you don't have to worry about those kind of costs with Rajant. But back to the example Todd mentioned about multiple options, it's easy to get confused with different features and proposals. So it's important for a customer to ask questions to allow them to compare, as the saying goes, apples to apples. For example, is device A only a client device? Is device B, will it work as a repeater and a client? This is important to understand so that you know if you're comparing a box with single feature or multiple features. Also, do I save a few solar trailers in the overall design? This, of course, turns into tens of thousands of dollars. So, of course, look at the individual unit cost when you're comparing proposals and features from different vendors, but be sure to look at the total cost of ownership for each option that focuses not only on the current, but also the future bandwidth capacity. Back to you, Todd.
Thanks, Sagar. Before deciding about which network to buy, you should understand what the deployment costs will be. There are several facets within this category of deployment costs. First off, what is the cost of the network design? Every mine is unique, and every mine deserves a custom design to ensure optimum performance. Once the design is completed, you will understand the number of solar infrastructure points. You need to get a clear understanding of both the hardware and installation costs for these fixed points. For example, will each solar site have one radio node or multiple? You can expect a broad variation between networking technologies. Regarding your mobile fleet, you should expect your vendor to be able to give you installation cost breakdowns for each category of equipment. And lastly, you should be asking for a breakdown of commissioning costs. Any integrator worth their salt will have no issue providing pricing for network configuration, tuning and optimization, application onboarding, and training for operation and network administration, and ultimately handoff of the network to you, the customer. It feels like we pretty much covered everything, Sagar, so I'm anxious to hear what else you have for us.
I have one final one, and this one is a point that no customer likes. Actually, I don't think anyone likes: hidden or unexpected charges. So most customers are now very knowledgeable and ask about this to make sure there are no hidden charges, but sometimes there's still room for doubt and lack of clarity. So it's best to get this answered and asked clearly. Is there a cost if I want more throughput, for example? You pay X for 10 megabits per second, 11 megabits per second, and then you have to pay double or triple to get 20, 30, 40 megabits per second. First of all, this is not true scalability. And second, your budget planning just became more complicated for no reason. Fortunately, you won't get this kind of metering or throttling with Rajant. But this ties back to the OpEx question as well. Does enabling Wi-Fi or enabling another feature means the customer has to send another PO? Are there annual software license fees, one-time fee? Do you anticipate any infrastructure locations running multiple radio nodes? It'd be nice to have just a radio that gives you multiple features, so it's better to ask these questions up front rather than getting too far along before you have any surprises.
Okay, those are all excellent points, gentlemen. We've covered off-on performance, reliability, and price. What further technical items should customers make sure they learn about different manufacturers' offerings? Sagar?
Right, so one important question to ask is about security. We know the state of the world today when it comes to hacking and ransomware. Fortunately, several mining customers are not just ticking a box for security, they're asking some very detailed questions. So some of the questions I've heard are, show me how to enable MAC address encryption. That's very detailed. Or how do I set up per packet authentication from my office without connecting to every radio node with a physical cable? Now, this next question makes life easier for the mine operations and the mine IT team. It's about compatibility, such that you can continue using your current hardware version with new firmware, new radio models, etc. Look, it's always a good thing when your technology provider releases a new version, but the customers want to be sure that a new version doesn't mean that they have to change everything that they're currently using. So Rajant, for example, has released some new models recently, and the benefit is they're plug and play, or as I said earlier, power on and move on. No one wants to be forced to upgrade, so backwards and forward compatibility is key. And finally, every mine uses tablets and handheld smartphones, various access points. You want to know that the wireless network supports and allows connectivity with these various makes and models from different vendors. Okay, so I've spoken for a while now. Let me pass it back to Todd.
Thanks, Sagar. When we are really getting grilled, customers also ask, how do you manage quality of service? And do you support VLANs? Does the network management tool provide clear understanding of network performance? Are there any artificial intelligence features such as, can the network auto-route data? Can the network determine the optimum route between a source and a destination? Is the network self-healing? What effect does a component failure have on the operation of the overall network? The answers you would like to hear are, yes, there is a way to manage quality of service, and yes, VLANs are supported. You should also be looking for a solution with a comprehensive management tool that can easily allow you to visualize how any part or all of the network is performing at any point in time, as well as how the network is performing over time, or another way to say that is a historical performance trend of the network operations. A network that can self-form connections, evaluate how they compare to one another, and then utilize the best connection will absolutely be more reliable and perform at a higher rate, meaning more throughput and lower latency, than a network without these features. In evaluating the effects of a component failure, you want to avoid networks with any single points of failure. Murphy's Law dictates this is a bad idea. Back to you, Sagar.
An additional point from me on this. Customers ask how often to do a coverage analysis, when to add an additional infrastructure location, when or how often to look at what interference is doing to the performance of the network. So of course, every mine is going to have a different approach to these. Some best practices we have seen include at least 2 coverage runs per year, but the review of the network performance occurs much more frequently. Customers should ask for tools that allow monitoring of the network performance in real time and historical view, and only a couple of clicks away. So basically do it remotely from the office, not having to run around in the pit. What else have you got, Todd?
Those are all good suggestions. I would add to that, what is the depth of the technical experience at the integrator as well as at the manufacturer? Obviously, the more experience is better. You should pay close attention to how the vendor addresses and responds to your technical issues and concerns. The more times you must go back and clarify or repeat yourself, the higher the probability you're going to run into issues during or after your network deployment. You don't want to be an integrator or manufacturer's first attempt. It will be painful and costly for you as the customer. Finally, you need to find out what the security and encryption capabilities of the network are. Sagar, earlier you touched on this briefly. Everyone listening will probably recall a few years ago when WPA2 was hacked. It caused a lot of panic to companies who use this as their primary security. We could spend a lot of time talking about security, but in the most simple terms, the more security and types of encryption, the better.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been both informative and enlightening so far. If I was tasked with buying a wireless network for your mine, I would definitely be paying very close attention to the suggestions that you've made. Before we get to the Q&A section, I would like to ask each of you a question about customer referrals, if I may. Todd, this first one's for you. What would you say is more important, quantity of customer referrals or the quality of customer referrals?
Certainly, John. I would, however, rephrase the question just slightly because I think both are equally important for different reasons. I would say that the quantity of referrals that you are able to give a customer gives the prospective customer the confidence that choosing your solution will reduce their deployment risk. On the other hand, having very high quality customer referrals gives a potential customer the confidence that you can help them achieve their expected return on investment targets. A senior manager at a mine once told me, "Do you know why we chose your network over the competition?" I answered, "Well, I guess you thought it was a better value." He said, "No, it was because when we asked your competition to speak with another customer that was running the same solution being offered to us, they gave us a field engineer that worked for the manufacturer. We made the same request a second time. Then they gave us a salesperson who worked for one of their integrators. The third time we asked, They did finally give us a customer, only when we spoke to him, he was running a previous generation of equipment that was not compatible with the solution we were considering. It was a different product altogether. He went on to tell me the conversation became a bit strained when they went back the fourth time and insisted on speaking to an actual customer who was running the exact solution being proposed. At this point, the manufacturer's representative admitted that they didn't actually have any customer referrals running this new generation of equipment. So when you're evaluating customer referrals, you should ask for a referral of a mine of equal size and also a mine running similar applications that are in operation at your mine. If the vendor cannot produce this, you might consider this to be an important red flag.
Okay, so Sagar, have you noticed a difference in effectiveness between prospect to customer telephone calls versus a prospect visiting a customer site?
So I've helped customers do both, and I've seen firsthand how great the benefits from both options. A site visit offers a lot more benefits. It's not always possible to go halfway around the world. It wasn't always easy before. Imagine how the rest of this year will go, right? So because I've seen both options to be valuable, I can say with certainty that a phone call can be very informative if the right questions are asked. In the same way, a site visit can be completely useless if the right questions are not asked. What is critical is that you ask for a customer reference and at least follow through with a phone call if a site visit is not possible. Which brings us back to the topic of this webinar and the reason we're sharing questions that mining companies are asking. Be prepared and don't be afraid to ask all the right questions.
Gentlemen, that was excellent. I personally learned a lot of new insights, and I'm sure a lot of potential customers on this webinar likely picked up a lot of great ideas as well. It looks like we have a little bit of time left, so why don't we go through as many questions as we can until the top of the hour. Any questions that we don't have time to get to will be included in a Q&A document posted to Rajant's website, which will accompany the recording of this webinar. As I said at the beginning, we'll alternate who answers, but Todd and Sagar, if either of you would like to add to an answer, please do feel free to step in. So we have a question here from Kerry. Kerry said, I don't see a problem with the requirements using Rajant for autonomy, but when will Rajant be able to be certified by companies like CAT for autonomy? Todd, why don't we start with you for this one?
Certainly. Well, Kerry, that's a great question. And we would love to be certified yesterday if that was a possibility. We've been engaged in testing Caterpillar's autonomous applications now. Gosh, I think we're going on about 2 years, both for drills, dozers, as well as haul trucks. And ultimately, CAT controls that time frame. So we do have customers actively running autonomous dozers on Rajant that have been tested in the field successfully, and we've been through a number of successful tests on autonomous trucks. So I believe it's just a matter of time for them to get through, and to give them a little bit of credit. We all know that everybody's been set back a little bit by the current COVID-19. So I don't want to come across that I'm being overly harsh or critical on them.
Well, and I just want to add, some of you may have read the press release or the news with Hitachi and their autonomous solutions and Rajant. So that is going very well. And there's a couple other projects that we're probably not at liberty to talk about right now, but the Hitachi press release was released, I believe, last week.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have another question here from Semyon. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, and apologies if I'm not. They ask how to calculate CIR on upstream and downstream between router on mobile vehicle and gateway. It's important for some applications' workability. Sagar, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. I haven't heard CIR in a while. I believe you're referring to the committed information rate. Maybe if I'm correct, then I'll answer it, but I get the gist of your question. So there are different options there are different ways that you can measure what bandwidth is available between the mobile equipment and your server office and your main switch. With Rajant, there are certain tools that are built into the network management tool. You can basically sit from your office and monitor what's happening. Then there are some additional tools available. I think without boring the rest of the audience, I'll just have one of our engineers who can speak a lot more intelligently on this and send you the information. But definitely, there are some built-in tools from our network management tool.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
I could add to that as well. Rajant doesn't necessarily have a specific setting where you can guarantee a fixed throughput across a specific route or between 2 points. But we do have a number of tools that ensure that you get the quality of service that you're looking for. One of those is that through VLAN management, you can assign priority to different applications that are assigned to different VLANs, which ensures that specific data always has priority as it's going across the network. Additionally, another important feature that Rajant does offer is our nodes are one of the very few which operate in full duplex mode, which means that a specific node can both send and receive data simultaneously. The net effect is that you can make multi-hop transmissions extremely efficient with very low latency, and essentially start and end that multi-hop transmission with the same amount of data.
Okay, thank you very much, Todd. I can see we've got another couple of questions here. I would just like to remind and encourage the audience to put any questions that they have in the question box on the right-hand side, and we should have time to get through all of them. So I have another question here from Juan, who asks, how can you compare with other brands like Fluid Mesh and Steam Wireless offering apparently a similar solution at low cost? Todd, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So off the top of my head, I'm not that familiar with Steam Wireless's specific offering. Fluid Mesh, I can tell you, is a point-to-multi-point network. Were you going to say something, Sagar?
No.
Okay, I'll continue. So Fluid Mesh is a point-to-multi-point network. It's a different technology. It's not a true meshing technology. In comparison, we have had customers do side-by-side comparisons, and what they found, the specific comparison test I'm thinking of is the customer created a test along a linear route. So it's essentially a multi-hop single line transmission where there wasn't multiple options in multiple directions. In my opinion, this test greatly favored the architecture of a point-to-multi-point network. However, in the end, it turned out that Rajant had higher throughput and lower latency.
Okay, Sagar, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a couple of, since the question is about comparing with other brands, and especially Fluid Mesh, I think the reference side become critical. I think you can definitely call a number of Rajant customers around the world, and they will tell you what the performance is. I believe, a customer looking at different options should do the same thing with other vendors. The other point is, of course, about the bandwidth, the total cost of ownership. Do you really get a solution that allows you to be truly scalable? And as Todd mentioned, when we say mesh, unfortunately, the word mesh has been used and abused for years. But when we say mesh, we mean every unit will talk to any other unit. We don't have a concept of repeater versus client. So a couple of things I just wanted to add.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question here. Todd, this one's for you. Earlier on, there was a comment about routes considered manually or automatically. How would automatically work?
So in a Rajant network, unlike lots of other networks, Radiant nodes are able to make multiple redundant connections on each and every frequency, specifically by each and every radio transceiver. We don't use a master control node. Each node is its own controller, so to speak, and each breadcrumb, we call our nodes breadcrumbs, evaluates the quality in a real-time basis of each connection and automatically routes data over the very best connection. There's a little bit of information embedded with each packet, which gives each subsequent breadcrumb along the route information about what the end destination is in mind, so that the routing is always optimized to get that packet to its destination along its most efficient route.
Okay, thank you very much, Todd. We have another question here from Rohan. They ask, suppose if we want to track and see the historical availability of network and onboard equipment, like in the case of network monitoring software, is there any possibility or feature to view the same through Rajant Wi-Fi networks?
I can take that. So yes, absolutely. So the Rajant offers a number of management tools. One of them focuses only on real-time monitoring of the network. So you can see how two particular nodes are talking amongst themselves versus track how a truck is maintaining communication with the central office versus look at the entire network, whether it's 50, 100, 300, 500 radios. And the second tool that we offer, which goes back to your question, is about historical analysis. So absolutely right that having a tool that looks at historical and allows it to be viewed in a graphical format helps, right? You can say, hey, what happened to this truck or 5 trucks in this particular area? It used to work great a week ago, 3 hours ago, but now something changed. I don't know what it is, and I want to find out. So yes, there are tools available to allow you to look at real time and historical, gives you in a graphical format, so you don't have to go through data line by line, but you can view it, and it sends alerts as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Todd, did you have anything to add to that?
No, Sagar did a great job.
Okay, excellent. I have another question here from Nitin. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly again. They say, hello, what is the right approach to work? A, with an automotive company such as Hitachi, or B, work with a mining company directly? Todd, why don't we start off with you on this one?
Okay. Quite often we will have either OEM equipment companies like Hitachi or Caterpillar or someone like that contact us directly. And I'm kind of going to answer both these scenarios together. The alternative would be working with a mining company directly. We also have mining companies reach out to us through our website or calling the main number or calling one of our sales reps. And we're happy to engage with both the OEMs and mining companies. One thing to be noted, we do partner with local integrators to assist in design, deployment, and ongoing support of the network, simply because it's impractical for Rajant as a manufacturer to have a sufficient number of engineers deployed all over the world to support everyone. But it is most often the common scenario that we work in partnership with those local integrators. In fact, we call them partners with the end customers and or the OEM manufacturers when they have specific engineering questions or challenges that they're trying to overcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Sagar, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not at all.
Okay, excellent stuff. I actually have a question here for you, Sagar. You mentioned earlier about a central controller, and the question is just, is a central controller needed?
So, right, I talked about it earlier. No, actually, you do not want a wireless network that uses central controller. And central controller, I mean, maybe in non-technical terms, is like just a boss that needs to know what everybody's doing. So all the wireless nodes in a network will work faster, more efficiently. The mine will appreciate lower latency, higher throughput without a central controller.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to go and say, encourage people again to ask if they had any questions. Please do go ahead and ask them. The question box is on the right-hand side of the screen. We have another question here from Rohan, who asks, in the case of shadow zone for some mining areas, can 2.4 GHz bullet radios support mesh network feature for better network connectivity? Todd, why don't we go with you on this one?
Sure. We do make a single radio transceiver bullet radio called the JR3. It can operate in 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, and it does form multiple connections, multiple redundant connections. Now, that is certainly a superior connection to, say, a Wi-Fi client, because one, that JR3 will transmit at the same power as any of our other breadcrumbs, so you're going to get better range and you're going to have redundant connections. One thing to keep in mind with that single radio transceiver device is it will be operating at half duplex because it only has one radio.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one more question here from Freddie, who asks, when the SW or HW change, the version is necessary is it necessary to change the version in all devices or equipment?
I can take that. So no, I think this question is about when a new version is released of the firmware. So no, what we offer is we make multiple releases a year, and we have a list of the features and what's included in the release, and the customer has the option to upgrade or use that release. But there's nothing mandatory. Of course, we always recommend all our customers to have the latest version, because this just makes sure that you have all the features that are available. But when you upgrade, I think a better question is, how do I get this new version to the 120 equipment that I have or 200 equipment that I have running in a mine? And that's where, again, using the management tool that we offer, you can sit in your office, as long as you have proper credentials and access logins, you can sit in your office and schedule an upgrade remotely. You can do it all at one time. You can do it at the schedule that works with you. So short answer is we offer options. It's not mandatory. We offer new firmware releases. It's not mandatory. We always recommend it. And when you decide to use it, because at some point you will say, great, I want this feature, and I will have to upgrade my entire fleet, you can do it at a pace and from your office.
Thank you very much, Sagar.
Hey, John, can I add one other thing to that? Freddie was also asking about hardware changes, and do you have to change all the devices at the same time? Rajant is one of the only wireless networking companies that maintains compatibility between generations of equipment. So it's inevitable at some point, every model we sell will eventually become end of life. And by end of life, we mean that we're no longer making new versions of firmware, and it will not be produced any longer. Generally, products go end of life when we can no longer get the electronics to make that part. However, because we offer backward and forward compatibility, it does not mean that you have to rip and replace your entire network. You can simply insert the replacement or the newer version of hardware into your existing network, and it will continue to operate. We have many, many networks all over the world running multi-generations of equipment in the Rajant networks.
Thank you very much, Todd. We've had a couple more questions come in. This is excellent stuff. Please do keep these coming in. We do have a bit more time. This question is from Nando, who asks, do you have solutions for extending the RF coverage of a Rajant network? Sagar, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay. Well, first off, Todd, good catch on the last question. Thank you for clarifying on the hardware portion of Freddie's question. That's a very good explanation. So to extend the coverage, I mean, look, there are a number of ways. The simplest thing is, as you know, as Nando probably knows, is every truck and shovel dozer that has a Rajant network acts as a repeater. So it's actually extending the coverage in itself. But yeah, sometimes there will be instances where a mine is going into a new pit, or they completely changing the focus. With this virus, who knows what's going on? But yes, there are options. And the fortunate thing is that the rest of the network does not have to be impacted by anything that needs to be done on one side, one part of the pit. I think to give you a detailed answer, we would need to know a little bit more details about what exactly you're trying to do. So happy to discuss that with you outside of this forum.
Okay, thank you very much. Yep, that can definitely be arranged. We have one more question here from Peter, who asks, are there any certifications on your equipment regarding hazardous underground mines, for example, blasting systems? Todd, why don't we go with you first?
All right, good question, Peter. I'm going to have to make some assumptions about your question, and I'll apologize before I even answer. If I don't answer it fully or completely give you what you're looking for, you're by all means welcome to reach out either by phone or email to get further clarification. We'd be happy to engage with you. We do have Rajant equipment in underground mines. We do not currently have a explosion-proof certification for underground coal mines, and we do not currently have any plans to add that certification.
Okay, thank you very much, Todd.
I'll just add one more point. I know that's not Peter's question, but since I read blasting systems, I just would like to share for anyone else who may have a question. So there's a blasting company in Chile that uses Rajant. They had a project last year, so I know that it's actually been installed, but they were asked by their mining customer to just have more real-time access to data information as they're going through their process. So it's open pit, it's not a coal mine, it's a copper mine, but if anyone's interested in blasting for open pit, yes, we have. If it's underground hazardous, then Todd's answer is spot on.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got time for one or two more questions here. Rohan actually has come back with another question, fairly short and sweet. They ask, what is the general range for PMP and P2P devices?
So,
sorry, Todd, yeah, we'll go with you on this one.
I was going to say PMP is referring to point to multi-point, and P2P would be point to point. That is, I'm going to say it depends. There's a lot of factors that go into how far can a point to multi-point or a point to point device can transmit. Everything from the height of the tower, the focus of the beam, both the horizontal and vertical beam width, what the gain of the antennas are. Generally, you ask this question kind of the opposite way, in that you say, I have this distance, and you would go to a point to multi-point or a point to point vendor and say, could you engineer me a shot to make this span that I have? And you give them the GPS coordinates, and they could tell you pretty quick, just off of Google Earth, whether or not they would be able to pick specific antennas and erect a sufficient power to make the shot you're looking for be successful.
Thank you very much, Todd. Okay, we have time for one more question here. This question is from Pritam. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly again. She says, many original equipment manufacturer equipment or machines come inbuilt with integrated wireless-based units. In this case, how about interoperability to communicate with existing devices?
Yeah, so I think the good news is that the Rajant wireless mesh network is 802.11 compatible. So yes, we have very unique benefits in terms of maintaining mesh connections across multiple frequencies and multiple antennas and multiple devices. But when it comes to interoperability with products from any vendor that you may have on your mind, as long as that device is 802.11 compliant, it can connect to the Rajant network as a Wi-Fi client. So typically the connectivity that happens is either, you basically connect a cable into the Rajant network or the Rajant node with a switch, or you have these devices, whether it's handheld or in this case, I believe Pritham is asking, specifically to some things that are on the OEM machine, and they are compatible with 802.11. Just enable that as a client. You will need to, again, from your office, you don't have to go on every truck and enable this on the Rajant node. You can just tell the Rajant node, accept wireless 802.11 clients to connect with you, and we will do the rest.
Okay.
Did you want to add anything else, Todd? Did I miss anything?
No, you did not miss anything. And this wasn't exactly part of Pritham's question, but I would just add, in the event that you have equipment on your truck that allows for an Ethernet connection, Rajant is also fully compliant with TCP/IP standards, so we can interoperate with over Ethernet or Wi-Fi, as Sagar eloquently explained.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That just about wraps things up with regards to the Q&A. I would just like to remind anyone that any unanswered questions, and if you wanted any more detail, these will be covered in a document posted to Rajant's website, and a recording will be emailed to everyone who has registered. I'd also like to say one more thank you to everyone for attending today, and to Todd and Sagar for their excellent answers. I've definitely learned a lot today, so thank you very much. And I'd just like to sign off by saying, everyone, please stay safe and take care, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.